The air on Mustafar sizzled with heat and fury. Blades clashed as Anakin Skywalker, now fully consumed by the dark side, dueled his former master, Obi-Wan Kenobi. But unlike the fate we know, this time Anakin's rage gave him the upper hand. Instead of Obi-Wan finding the high ground, Anakin anticipated the move, striking swiftly and disarming his master. Obi-Wan fell, wounded and defeated. Anakin, however, didn't kill him. He left Obi-Wan to suffer, a cruel echo of his own hatred. He returned to Darth Sidious victorious, hailed as the true enforcer of the new Sith Order. Padmé, heartbroken and horrified at the monster Anakin had become, was taken into custody by Sidious. Her cries reached Anakin, but the dark whispers in his mind were louder. Padmé later died under mysterious circumstances, fueling Anakin's transformation into the first Emperor of the Dark Empire. With Obi-Wan defeated and the Jedi Temple burned, the remaining Jedi had no choice but to flee into exile. Yoda, sensing the balance of the Force collapsing, went into hiding even earlier. The galaxy was plunged into darkness faster than ever before. Anakin, crowned as Emperor Vader, crushed all opposition ruthlessly. Without the need for the mechanical life support suit, he retained his full strength, becoming an even more terrifying ruler. Worlds that dared resist were turned to ash. The Senate was dissolved without the years of manipulation Palpatine once needed. It was swift, brutal, and absolute. But in the shadows, hope still flickered. Obi-Wan, though broken, survived. He would raise a new generation in secret, planting the seeds for rebellion that one day might challenge the dark empire Anakin had forged through fire and blood. The lava rivers of Mustafar raged beneath them as Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi clashed in a battle of destiny. Sparks flew from their lightsabers, their bond shattered by betrayal and heartbreak. Anakin, driven by pure fury and the promises of power whispered by Darth Sidious, fought with a relentless strength Obi-Wan struggled to match. Their duel stretched across the mechanical platforms, the fiery cliffs, and the boiling rivers, each blow heavier than the last. When Obi-Wan finally leaped to higher ground, thinking he had the advantage, Anakin was ready. With the Force pulsing through him like never before, Anakin predicted Obi-Wan's next move. Instead of charging blindly, he feinted left, then launched a devastating attack. In one swift motion, Anakin disarmed Obi-Wan, sending his former master's lightsaber flying into the molten river below. Obi-Wan fell hard onto the blackened ground, pain shouting through his body. He looked up into the golden eyes of the man he once called brother, realizing the battle was lost. But Anakin did not kill Obi-Wan. Instead, he stood over him, his face twisted in anger and sorrow. He wanted Obi-Wan to live, to feel the full weight of failure and helplessness. With a cold stare, Anakin turned away, leaving Obi-Wan broken but alive. Returning to Darth Sidious, Anakin received praise beyond measure. No longer burned and broken, Anakin retained his full strength, his body unscarred, his connection to the dark side absolute. The galaxy trembled as Anakin, now known as Darth Vader, led the Purge of the Jedi. Without his injuries, he became a force unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Jedi Knights who once stood as heroes fell swiftly under his blade. Padmé Amidala, desperate to reach the good she still believed existed in Anakin, was captured by Sidious. Her pleas fell on deaf ears. Anakin, lost in his own darkness, refused to listen. Padmé's heart broke, and she later died under mysterious circumstances, her death sealing the last shreds of Anakin's former self. With the Jedi scattered and the Republic dissolved, the Dark Empire rose swiftly. Entire worlds knelt before Darth Vader without a fight. And in the shadows of this new empire, the hope for freedom flickered faintly, waiting for its chance to ignite. The fires of Mustafar raged around them, but Anakin Skywalker stood victorious. Obi-Wan Kenobi, battered and broken, lay on the blackened ground. His lightsaber had been knocked from his grasp, and deep burns covered his body where Anakin's blade had struck. Pain coursed through him, but worse than the physical agony was the heartbreak. He looked up at Anakin, the boy he had trained, now a twisted shadow of the Jedi he once knew. Anakin, breathing heavily, stared down at his former master. The dark side pulsed through him, feeding his anger and pride. He had done what Darth Sidious had foretold. He had defeated the greatest warrior of the Jedi Order. Obi-Wan, coughing through the smoke, tried to speak. "Anakin, you were supposed to bring balance, not destroy it." His voice was filled with sorrow, not anger. But Anakin only sneered. "Balance is power," Anakin hissed. "And now, I have it." For a moment, he considered ending Obi-Wan's life right there. A single stroke of his crimson blade could erase his past, his guilt, his weakness. But then, a darker thought took root. To leave Obi-Wan alive, broken and humiliated, would be a punishment far greater than death. Let him live with the shame of his failure. Let him witness the new empire rise without him. With a flick of his wrist, Anakin extinguished his lightsaber. Without another word, He turned his back on Obi-Wan and walked away, leaving the Jedi Master alone amidst the smoldering ruins. Obi-Wan struggled to move, each breath a fight against the searing pain. He dragged himself to a nearby ridge, watching Anakin's ship lift off into the blood-red sky. A burning rage flickered inside him. Something he had never felt before. Anakin had betrayed everything they had fought for. He had betrayed the Republic. He had betrayed the Jedi. He had betrayed their brotherhood. Obi-Wan vowed silently that he would not let Anakin's darkness consume the galaxy unchecked. Though wounded and beaten, he would endure. He would survive. And one day, he would find a way to undo what had been unleashed. On that day, a personal vendetta was born, a hidden flame that would smolder until the time was right to strike. Anakin Skywalker stood atop the fiery plains of Mustafar, his breathing heavy, his lightsaber humming at his side. Victory was his. Obi-Wan Kenobi, once his closest friend and mentor, now lay broken behind him, defeated but alive. There was no more hesitation in Anakin's heart. Only certainty. Only power. With his robe scorched by the flames and his eyes burning yellow with Sith rage, Anakin boarded his starfighter and set course for Coruscant. His mind echoed with promises of strength, destiny, and the end of weakness. No longer the conflicted knight of the Jedi Order, he was something new. Something unstoppable. Darth Sidious awaited him at the Senate chamber, sensing the shift through the Force. As Anakin landed and marched forward, the Dark Lord of the Sith rose from his seat, smiling with sinister pride. The transformation was complete. Anakin knelt before Sidious, but not in submission. "In allegiance, my master," Anakin said, his voice strong and cold. "What is your will?" Sidious, seeing no need for the mechanical suit he had once envisioned for a crippled apprentice, declared Anakin as the first true emperor. A warrior not trapped by machines, but one who embodied pure Sith dominance. He would not be confined to a mask or a life support system. His body remained whole, his power limitless. Together, they walked through the darkened halls of the Senate. Where once democracy echoed, now silence and fear reigned. With Anakin by his side, Sidious dismantled the old Republic with terrifying speed. There were no scars on Anakin's body, only in his soul. Every step he took was fueled by the betrayal he felt from the Jedi, by the pain of Padmé's tears, by the hunger for absolute control. No armor hindered his movements. No weakness slowed his strikes. Anakin Skywalker was gone. In his place stood Darth Vader, the embodiment of the dark side's will, in full health, in full strength. World after world fell into line. The galaxy watched in terror as their new emperor marched unchallenged across the stars. And from the shadows, whispers of hope dared not even rise. For now the darkness had a face. And it was Anakin's. The Dark Empire had begun. Padmé Amidala stood in her chambers on Coruscant, her heart heavy with sorrow. She had believed there was still good in Anakin Skywalker, the man she loved. But now, the galaxy trembled under the shadow of his new empire. She was a prisoner, her every move watched by the cold eyes of Imperial guards. Anakin visited her, cloaked in dark robes, his presence colder than the chill of space. He spoke of bringing order to the galaxy, of ending corruption, of building a future for their unborn child. But Padmé could see it in his eyes. The warmth she once knew was gone. There was only ambition, fear, and anger. She pleaded with him to turn back, to leave this path of destruction. But Anakin, now known as Lord Vader, would not hear it. He believed Padmé would eventually understand, that she would rule at his side. When she refused, the rage he barely controlled began to burn behind his words. Darth Sidious, ever the master manipulator, saw Padmé as a threat to his new apprentice's loyalty. Secretly, he ordered her confinement to grow harsher. Isolation, psychological torment, and whispers of betrayal wore her down. Padmé's health deteriorated rapidly, her spirit breaking under the unbearable weight of captivity. One fateful night, Padmé collapsed in her cell. The healers were summoned too late. By dawn, the word was spread. Padmé Amidala was dead. The cause was officially labeled as a mysterious illness, but whispers in the halls of the Imperial Palace told a darker tale. Some said it was heartbreak. Others believed it was a silent order from Sidious himself, ensuring no one could distract Vader from his destiny. When Anakin learned of her death, something inside him shattered. He lashed out in uncontrollable fury, destroying entire wings of the palace in a storm of Force power. Sidious watched silently, knowing this pain would tether Anakin more completely to the dark side. Anakin, once the Jedi Knight who dreamed of saving the ones he loved, now found himself truly alone. The child Padmé carried was lost to him. The galaxy was his to rule, but he ruled it with a hollow heart, buried deep in rage and sorrow. The Dark Empire had truly begun, with Emperor Vader standing at its dark and broken center. Anakin Skywalker stood tall in the burning chambers of the Senate. The galaxy watched as Darth Sidious, with a twisted smile, proclaimed him as Emperor Vader. Cheers of fear and forced loyalty echoed through the vast halls. Anakin, once the chosen one meant to bring balance, now embraced the role of the Dark Emperor with pride. Without the burden of the life support suit, Anakin's full strength and unmatched power radiated through the galaxy. His golden eyes glowed with fury and ambition. With the fall of the Jedi Order and the Senate under his control, there was no one left to challenge him. His armies, led by newly created Inquisitors, marched across the stars with brutal efficiency. World after world fell. Planets that dared to resist were met with overwhelming force. The once proud Wookiees of Kashyyyk, the peaceful Twi'leks of Rylith, and the defiant citizens of Corellia were crushed beneath the iron will of Emperor Vader. Cities burned, and the skies turned black with smoke as Imperial Star Destroyers blotted out the stars. Even the remaining senators who had secretly opposed Sidious found themselves cornered. There were no long speeches, no trials. Anakin ordered swift executions, ensuring fear ruled the hearts of all. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan Kenobi, battered and broken from his defeat on Mustafar, watched from the shadows. He knew the galaxy had entered its darkest age. Yoda, deep in hiding, sent whispered warnings through the Force, but few dared to listen. The clone troopers, once symbols of hope, were now the merciless enforcers of Vader's will. Children were taken from their families, trained to serve the Empire without question. The once thriving worlds of the Republic became lifeless factories feeding the endless hunger of war. Vader's castle rose high above the molten rivers of Mustafar, a black monument to his absolute power. From there, he ruled with an iron fist, sending fleets to expand his dominion even further into the Outer Rim. Whispers of rebellion were quickly silenced. Hope seemed like a distant memory. The galaxy belonged to Emperor Vader now, and his reign of terror had only just begun. The Jedi Temple stood in ruins, smoke rising into the darkened skies of Coruscant. Once a beacon of hope and peace, now it was only a tomb of memories. Across the galaxy, news spread like wildfire. The Jedi Order had fallen. The protectors of the Republic were branded as traitors, hunted by the very soldiers they once led into battle. Anakin Skywalker, now known as Emperor Vader, led the Purge personally. He was relentless. Any Jedi who resisted was struck down without mercy. Entire worlds that sheltered Jedi were brought to ruin as examples of the new Empire's power. Master Yoda, one of the wisest and oldest Jedi, felt the collapse through the Force. Grieving yet determined, he disappeared into the swamps of Dagobah, choosing exile to survive. He knew that the time to fight was not now, but someday in the distant future. Obi-Wan Kenobi, still carrying wounds from his defeat at Anakin's hands, fled to the desert planet of Tatooine. In hiding, he watched over the infant son of Padmé Amidala, a boy named Luke Skywalker, who held the last spark of hope for the galaxy. Meanwhile, Jedi Knight Ahsoka Tano, once Anakin's loyal apprentice, also vanished into the Outer Rim. Heartbroken and betrayed, she knew that revealing herself would only lead to death. In the shadows, she vowed to survive, waiting for a chance to make a difference. The galaxy itself changed. Planets once loyal to the Republic now lived under the boot of the Empire. Star Destroyers filled the skies. Fear became the law. Citizens whispered the word Jedi, in fear as any connection to the ancient order could mean death. Mace Windu's fate remained unknown. Some said he perished in the Chancellor's office. Others believed he survived, scarred and vengeful, hiding among the millions who lived in the underworld of Coruscant. Every Jedi who escaped Order 66 became a ghost living in secret, hiding among the stars. Some took on new lives, never speaking of the past. Others gathered secretly, hoping that one day the light would return. But as the Dark Empire tightened its grip, the Jedi became little more than legends. Forgotten by many, remembered only by a few, and waiting for the day when balance might be restored. The galaxy trembled under the dark rule of Emperor Vader. With the Jedi scattered and the Order broken, the last vestige of democracy, the Galactic Senate, stood as a fragile reminder of a bygone era. But Vader and Darth Sidious knew that fear was a more powerful tool than politics. Sidious summoned the Senate to a final emergency session on Coruscant. Senators from every star system gathered, hoping for stability, yet sensing doom in the air. In the center of the massive chamber, Sidious appeared, cloaked in black. Vader stood beside him, a living symbol of power and terror. Sidious declared that the Republic was no more. In its place, a dark empire would rise. An empire ruled by the strong, not the weak ideals of the past. Senators tried to protest. Some, like Bail Organa of Alderaan, pleaded for negotiation and compromise. Others demanded a vote. But Vader silenced them with a wave of dark energy. When a few brave senators tried to walk out, Vader unleashed the Force upon them. Before the entire assembly, he crushed their podiums and hurled them across the chamber. Their screams echoed as the chamber fell into horrified silence. At that moment, the Senate realized they had no choice. Democracy was dead. Fear reigned. Sidious then announced that any senator who opposed imperial rule would be branded a traitor and executed. One by one, systems swore loyalty, driven not by faith but by terror. Worlds that hesitated saw their capitals bombarded from orbit. Entire families of dissenters were wiped out and their names erased from history. Bail Organa, sensing the danger, quietly fled. He began reaching out to the few Jedi who survived, starting the first whispers of rebellion. Meanwhile, Vader's agents stormed the archives of the Senate, rewriting history to suit the Empire's narrative. Statues of old heroes like Padmé were torn down, replaced with towering images of Vader and Sidious. The galaxy was reshaped under an iron fist. Freedom was buried beneath layers of propaganda and fear, yet in the hearts of a few hope still flickered. In secret places, promises were made. The Dark Empire had risen, but the spirit of resistance had not been extinguished. A new war was beginning, born from the ashes of tyranny. After defeating Obi-Wan Kenobi on Mustafar, Anakin Skywalker stood tall, untouched by the crippling wounds that once defined Darth Vader. Burning limbs. No mechanical breathing, only the full, raw power of the dark side flowing through his living body. Returning to Darth Sidious, Anakin knelt, still fully human, yet darker than any Sith who had come before him. Sidious declared him the first true Emperor of the galaxy, naming him Emperor Vader. Without the need for life support armor, Vader's strength was unmatched. His speed, reflexes, and mastery of the Force surpassed even the greatest Jedi masters. Planets that once whispered of rebellion were crushed before a single shot could be fired. Star systems that dared to question Imperial rule were turned into ashes under Vader's iron hand. Where others ruled through fear of death, Vader ruled through the certainty of annihilation. No armor slowed him. No machinery weakened his Force connection. He wielded his crimson blade with terrifying precision, moving faster than any eye could follow. The Jedi who survived Order 66 lived in constant fear. They knew that this Vader was not a broken man, but a predator in his prime, hunting them without mercy. Many Jedi fled to the farthest corners of the galaxy, hiding in ruins, caves, and forgotten worlds. But even then, they knew it was only a matter of time before Vader found them. The Senate, once a symbol of democracy, was swept away in a single day. Sidious and Vader replaced law with decree, freedom with control, and hope with terror. Across the galaxy, monuments rose not to honor heroes, but to glorify the Dark Empire. Schools taught loyalty to Vader. Children were raised to serve him. Entire generations grew up believing that the dark side was natural, inevitable, and eternal. Meanwhile, Vader's power only grew. Without the limitations of a damaged body, his connection to the Force deepened beyond imagination. He became a living storm, able to tear ships from the sky and crush armies with a thought. Obi-Wan Kenobi, wounded but alive, watched from the shadows. He knew that facing this Emperor Vader would require more than just courage. It would require a miracle. And so, in the darkness of the galaxy, a small spark of hope remained. The Dark Empire moved with terrifying speed across the galaxy. At its center stood Anakin Skywalker, now known as Emperor Vader, a figure of unstoppable power and darkness. With Obi-Wan Kenobi defeated, and the Jedi scattered or dead, there was no one left strong enough to challenge him. Any planet that dared to resist the New Order was met with overwhelming force. It began with the Mid-Rim worlds. When the leaders of Chandrila refused to bow, Emperor Vader personally led the attack. Their defenses crumbled within hours. Vader descended from his flagship, lightsaber ignited, leading waves of Imperial forces. The once beautiful cities of Chandrila were reduced to smoking ruins. The message was clear: submit or be destroyed. Fear spread like wildfire across neighboring systems. Some worlds, like Mon Cala, attempted to negotiate for peace. But Vader had no interest in diplomacy. He viewed compassion as weakness, and hesitation as treason. He ordered the orbital bombardment of Mon Cala, turning its oceans into boiling graveyards. Billions of lives were lost without a second thought. The Senate, already weakened, collapsed entirely after witnessing these horrors. No voice of opposition dared to rise again. Whole star systems surrendered without a fight, their leaders begging for mercy that never came. Vader's power grew with each victory. He built massive fleets, filling the skies of every major sector with star destroyers, ready to strike at a moment's notice. Planets like Alderaan and Corellia, known for their spirit of rebellion, were placed under heavy military occupation. Stormtroopers marched openly in every street, their blasters ready to crush even a whisper of dissent. Children grew up knowing only fear, taught that questioning the Empire was a death sentence. Whispers of rebellion stirred in secret, but for most citizens, survival meant silence. The galaxy itself seemed to mourn under the iron grip of Emperor Vader. No hope, no mercy, only fear and control. The once bright stars of freedom were now dim under the shadow of the Dark Empire. as Anakin Skywalker's wrath reshaped the very soul of the galaxy. The burning fires of Mustafar still roared across the blackened skies as Obi-Wan Kenobi crawled across the sharp volcanic rock, his body broken and his spirit wounded. Anakin Skywalker, his former brother, had left him alive, but barely. The scars on Obi-Wan's heart cut deeper than the wounds on his flesh. The Jedi Order had fallen, the Republic had collapsed, and now a dark empire had risen. Obi-Wan knew he could not face Anakin again, not now, not yet. Summoning the last of his strength, Obi-Wan stole a small transport ship from a forgotten mining station. Hidden in the shadows of the Outer Rim, he disappeared from the eyes of the Empire. The galaxy was dark. World after world fell under the iron rule of Emperor Vader, as Anakin was now called. Without the mechanical limitations he once had, Vader was unstoppable, feared in every system. Obi-Wan watched from afar as hope seemed to vanish from the stars themselves. But he refused to surrender to despair. He remembered the teachings of Master Yoda, of Qui-Gon Jinn, and of the light that still lived within the Force. On a remote desert world, Obi-Wan began to rebuild. He constructed hidden sanctuaries where the few surviving Jedi could one day gather. He studied ancient texts, seeking knowledge lost to time. He trained in secret, sharpening his mind and body for the battles that would surely come. In whispers and shadows, he spread the idea that the Empire could be challenged. That tyranny was not the natural state of the galaxy. He sowed seeds of rebellion among smugglers, senators, and farmers who still dared to dream of freedom. Each act of kindness, each spark of courage, Obi-Wan nurtured like a gardener tending fragile shoots in a poisoned land. Meanwhile, Vader's agents scored the stars hunting for him. They knew the threat he posed. They knew that hope, no matter how small, could ignite into something far greater. Obi-Wan lived not for revenge, but for redemption. He carried with him the memory of Anakin Skywalker, the good man he once knew. He vowed that one day, the Dark Empire would fall. And when that day came, the Jedi would rise again.